Eric Berne, Games People Play. Conversations between people often seem simple and familiar, but if you look closely, you will see recurring patterns that repeat themselves over and over again. Sometimes they start calmly, with ordinary words, but end with one participant feeling irritated and the other convinced that they are right. Almost everyone is familiar with this feeling. It's as if everything is predetermined, and the outcome of the conversation can be predicted before it even begins. We think that we simply did not understand each other, but in fact, the repetitive nature of these situations shows that this is more than a coincidence. There are conversations that leave us feeling light and satisfied, but there are also those that leave us feeling empty, tired, or irritated. And the strangest thing is that sometimes we know in advance how it will end. This predictable outcome does not arise by chance. There is often an invisible game hidden within dialogues that the participants are not even aware of. Psychologist Eric Berne called such situations games. On the outside, ordinary words are spoken, but on the inside, a scenario is played out that has its own goals and rewards. For example, one person may complain about their life and talk about their problems, while another may offer solutions. But every piece of advice is rejected, and the conversation reaches an impasse. In this case, the outcome is predictable. The first person feels like a victim, while the second confirms their own view of the world. And so it repeats itself over and over again, creating a familiar feeling of frustration. Sometimes these scenarios manifest themselves in more subtle forms. Someone constantly teases or provokes with jokes that seem harmless. Then they are surprised by the other person's reaction, even though that was exactly the reaction they were seeking. The most unpleasant thing about these games is that they are convenient and predictable. They provide an internal reward, the opportunity to feel powerful, righteous, or, conversely, victimized, without making a conscious effort to choose. People get used to these scenarios, and repetition becomes a habit. Over time, conversations cease to be real communication. Closeness diminishes. Conversations turn into a repetition of familiar phrases and emotions, and even when they are close to each other, people play their usual roles, not seeing or hearing each other. We rarely choose these scenarios consciously. We learned most of them in childhood, observing how conflicts were resolved in the family, blame was assigned, and rules of interaction were established. In adult life, we simply transfer these models to new circumstances, to work, to personal relationships, and to everyday contacts with other people. People, places, and situations change, but the outcome often remains the same. If tension, fatigue, or a feeling of emptiness remain after communication, perhaps the problem is not the topic of conversation, but the hidden game, the repetitive scenarios that have long become a habit. Awareness of these games is the first step toward breaking them. Understanding that many reactions and emotions within a dialogue are triggered automatically and repeated allows us to start choosing how to respond, rather than simply following a set pattern. Only then does communication become genuine, and relationships become lively and sincere, without the usual roles and predictable outcomes. And when a person takes this first step, they begin to notice subtle moments in every conversation. Which words trigger an automatic reaction, which gestures trigger an old scenario, and how they can consciously change the course of the dialogue. This is not instant magic, but a gradual understanding of oneself and others, where every action matters. And it is in these small, conscious choices that lies the path to freedom from repetitive games, to the possibility of having conversations differently, more vividly and authentically. Gradually, paying attention to your reactions and observing habitual scenarios opens the door to the next step, the ability to influence your habits and create new models of interaction, which we will discuss further. Once a person begins to notice their habitual reactions and recurring scenarios, a new task arises, learning to recognize them in time. We often think we understand the situation, but inside we continue to act according to the old program. We look for answers in words, but ignore the meaning of actions, following familiar patterns that have long been ingrained in us. Each new conversation seems like a chance to change something, but in reality, we repeat old habits, as if an automatic program is running inside us. Conflicts at work, conversations with friends, or discussions with loved ones often turn out to be not about the essence of the topic, but about hidden motives, status, recognition, or inner righteousness. We argue, discuss details, and present arguments, but the result is often predictable. Someone gets annoyed, someone else is convinced they are right, and a third person remains an observer, seeing the same patterns repeating themselves. The situation is similar in personal relationships. Everyday conversations can quickly turn into familiar childhood scenarios, where guilt, manipulation, or the struggle for control are repeated. It is as if we are playing roles that we learned many years ago, and even good intentions do not help to change the outcome. The paradox is that although we seek change and desire more harmonious communication, we subconsciously cling to the familiar. It seems safe, even if it causes stress. Games give us the illusion of control, a familiar feeling of power or victimhood, and habit keeps us stuck in this cycle. At first, it is difficult to notice the difference between real emotions and reactions learned over the years. We react automatically, and those around us repeat the same scenarios with us, reinforcing the familiar cycle. Breaking out of this cycle requires awareness. The first step is to recognize that we are playing a game and honestly say to ourselves, I am not only speaking, but also acting according to a script that I have learned. Awareness allows us to notice triggers and choose our response instead of acting automatically. This is not an instant change, but a gradual learning process that requires attention and patience. Small pauses between stimulus and response, brief moments of awareness, eventually become a habit, replacing old scripts with new, freer ones. The practice of mindfulness opens up the possibility of seeing people differently. We begin to see their real emotions and motives, not just the roles they play in familiar games. Dialogues become lively, and we gradually learn to listen rather than just wait for our turn to speak. With each new conscious choice, familiar scenarios lose their power over us. Over time, we create new models of interaction that support mutual understanding and genuine closeness. It is important to understand that this is a gradual process. One conscious conversation will not change your whole life, but every small choice adds up. We begin to notice patterns, see which words or gestures trigger old scenarios, and learn to respond differently. Gradually, the habit of mindfulness becomes stronger than old patterns. It is in these small but constant steps that the path to freedom lies. Freedom is not manifested in the absence of conflict, but in the ability to choose how to respond to it. Every moment of conscious action creates a new reality, where conversations are not repetitive, and relationships are built on attention, respect, and understanding. Understanding and observing your habits opens the door to the next step. Actively changing behavior patterns, creating new scenarios, and forming genuine intimacy, where people see and hear each other without their usual roles. Once a person learns to notice their habitual reactions and see what scenarios are triggered in communication, space opens up for real change. Awareness now becomes not just a tool for observation, but a basis for active choice and influence on the course of relationships. We begin to see that old habits do not determine the entire dialogue, and we can consciously make decisions about how to respond and interact with other people. This understanding creates a sense of control that differs from the illusion of power in old games. It is based on attention and responsibility, not on habitual roles. At this stage, the profound effect of the practice becomes apparent. We stop falling into automatic scenarios, notice subtle signals of emotions and motives in those around us, and begin to act based on the real situation rather than habitual reactions. We learn to listen rather than wait for our turn to speak, to see rather than interpret through the filter of old patterns. Gradually, dialogues become lively, free from repetition and predictable conflicts. This skill affects not only personal relationships, but also interactions in any sphere of life. At work, with friends, or even in chance encounters, we can consciously choose how to behave and create a more harmonious atmosphere around us. Every moment of mindful action reinforces new habits, while old patterns lose their power. This is how small, conscious choices add up to new behavior patterns, forming a stable foundation for genuine closeness and trusting relationships. It is important to understand that this process is gradual. One conscious conversation or one moment of attention will not change your whole life, but consistent small steps create a cumulative effect. Gradually, paying attention to your habits and observing them becomes a natural part of life. We begin to notice patterns, understand which words or gestures trigger old scenarios, and choose new responses, forming the habit of acting consciously. As a result of this path, we gain true freedom. Freedom is not manifested in the absence of conflict, but in the ability to choose how to respond to it. Conversations become lively, relationships become real, and interactions with people cease to be a repetition of the past. We see each other without our usual roles, understand motives and emotions, and act based on the moment. Gradually, the habits of repetitive games weaken, giving way to attentive, lively, and genuine communication. The conclusion is simple. True closeness and understanding are built on attention, awareness, and the small choices we make every day. Every moment of conscious action destroys the old script and creates a new reality. And gradually, a person notices that each conscious choice becomes not just a separate action, but part of a holistic system of change. When this becomes established, conversations are no longer tiresome, conflicts do not repeat themselves, and relationships begin to bring satisfaction and joy. A feeling of inner freedom and strength emerges when familiar scenarios no longer control life, but serve only as a backdrop against which real communication unfolds. It is at this stage that awareness becomes a constant practice that gradually transforms all areas of life and opens the way to genuine, living closeness with other people. Subscribe to the Chapters and Capitals. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.